Welcome to Reality of Faith and Wisdom podcast number 7, where faith and life's wisdom and understanding is found on one platform, and that is Lord Jesus Christ. Today, we are continuing part 2, talking about calling, and my guest is my wife, my bride, my love, and the best friend, Viktoriya Mayba. Thank you for being here. You are awesome. Now, if you missed number 6, because this is part 2, we talked about the beginning stages of our calling. We talked about how we stepped into both, how we stepped into our calling, and how God started to open the doors in our life and showing us where to go. So in order for you to really understand this one, please watch part 1, and that's podcast number 6. And so in the last podcast, we ended up already going to Oklahoma, and we were going on the journey to go to Rhema Bible Training Center. We had 3 kids in the back, $400 in our pocket, broke. We only had 3 months of rent paid in Oklahoma. I didn't have a job. You didn't have a job. We had a college tuition to pay for, food to buy, kids to raise, to get babysitters. We didn't have no family. And we're driving to Oklahoma and thinking, God, how is this all going to happen?
But excited.
We were both excited. Absolutely. And today we're talking about out of our comfort. This podcast is called because God called us out of our comfort. There was no parents. There was no sisters, brothers, siblings. It was just me and you. And it was the most beautiful thing. And we're going to talk about that just a little bit later. Now, let me ask you this question. During this time, we're moving into Oklahoma. We don't have any money. We have 3 kids. We only have 3 months of rent, and we have to pay for the college. We have to find jobs. We have to find a babysitter and all these things. How did you feel as a mom, and what was going through your head?
Well, I want to start off saying that we prayerfully went into this decision making. We both were seeking God with all of our hearts and everything. So our main focus wasn't to get away from our circumstances. It was that longing to know who God is in our life and knowing what we don't know about God. We were thirsty, we were seeking. And I think it's important to say that we were seeking God with everything that we had. And what gave me peace about that decision with you is that I knew where you were in your life, that walk with Christ, because you shared with me before about your driveway experience with God and how you at one point where you were driving and then you felt the presence of God in the car. And, and so these things that you would share with me gave me that peace and filled up my little faith piggy bank, sort of say that you're on the right path, that I could trust you because I knew that you trusted God. And so in a way it's saying, you know what, I trust God and I trust you for you to be obedient to God. But I was personally terrified as well because I left everything I knew. We left our family. They were our babysitters. They were people we trusted.
Mom!
Grandma, sisters. We were all a very close family. Yeah. And so for me as a mom, knowing that I'm going somewhere where there is no family, that we had to make sure we were okay because, if I'm mad at you for some reason, there's nobody else around me.
That was the most beautiful thing. I think every marriage should experience that. You need to get out somewhere and just depend on one another. Because in those 7 years in Oklahoma, you became my best friend, truly. I can say that in Oklahoma. I didn't say, because I couldn't say that in Washington, even though I loved you with all my heart, but we always had other people to go cry to, and we never really cried on one another's shoulders. And so in those moments,
if we didn't want to hash things out, right? We could just cut it short and be like, I'm gonna go talk to my mom about you,
and
or whatever.
And God was preparing us for what's to come. Those are the little things. We ignore little things in our life, and we want God bring us to this mountain, take us like Moses onto the mountaintop, and let our face glow, and everybody sees my calling. But the calling was in those little things. I go back and I'm like, Lord, you were molding us. You were shaping us. We were fighting like cat and dog from time to time, but that was good for us to get through it, to get molded, to get shaped, and to finally, all right, there's nobody that we're going to call and scream, and we're going to depend on one another. We're going to pray for one another. We're going to truly trust one another.
And that's what I was going to say, that we learn to depend on one another. We learn to trust each other. We learn to trust others. I had a very hard time trusting anybody, really, and especially with my kids, especially in a different state, a different city. But God was faithful. God brought us the right people. He brought everything. So the one thing the phrase that I would go to is, "It is well with my soul," because there is a story in the Bible, and that is what she said. You know, even when the worst thing happened to her in her life and she lost her son, and as on her way she was looking for the prophet, her husband stopped her and said, "Is everything all right?" And she said, "It is well with my soul." And knowing that she had lost her son and he's laying on the bed dead, for me, I would be calling you, freaking out, "Oh my gosh, you know, something has happened to her child." But she knew where her strength came from, and she ran, you know, to the man of God, and she said, "It is well with my soul." So I figured, can't be as bad, and it is well with my soul. So I hope that answers your question.
And last podcast we finished this, that the calling is not a lot of people looking at a position and something glamorous that they think that, you know, the image, oh, this is how it's going to be. But the calling starts with both of us and with you at it got to both of us, but with me looking up and saying, "Lord, I'm going to serve you for the rest of my life." That's how we ended last podcast. And with that, we both agreed upon that no matter what's in front of us, we're going to look up, we're going to pray together as a family, and we're going to depend on one another. And that's the pivotal moment of everything. And talking about these experiences, you know, in the car, I still do that from time to time. I turn on the worship and I just start talking to God as He's in the passenger room. And there's times that the presence is so thick, I'm like, "God, I'm not looking. You're here. I don't want to be freaked out. Thank you for being in my room." And I'm crying, I'm worshiping. It's okay. You can, men cry, real men cry. And because God is in relationship, and He wants to be with you. He wants to be close to you, just like we are.
Yeah.
You know, but talking about different distractions in our life, because we both knew that God is calling us to ministry. We both knew, I'm going to say this because it's maybe important to some married people. We both had this desire to live in California since we were kids, or Florida. We were like, it was just a dream somewhere in the back of our minds that one day we're going to end up in California or Florida. Now we're living in Florida, and we'll tell you about this journey in our third part, the next podcast, not this one. But as we were going into college, and God gave us a job, and God gave us a babysitter, and companies, man, God gave us so much favor and grace, but there was a lot of distractions. Back right before we went to Oklahoma, I started the band called Hardy Avenue. And one of the confirmation, we started touring in Washington and some more Oregon and some around in those states. And in 2009, when you came to me and say, "Hey, we're going to Rhema Bible College," I received a phone call from a Tate music group, and they wanted to sign and give us, you know, record. They were record label, and I'm like, "Where'd you guys located?" And they were located in Oklahoma, and so there was such a great confirmation in my life. But later on, I started touring a little bit more. We were going to college. I was touring. I was working. I was a contractor. I had a couple employees. I didn't know how things. It was crazy, fit in. But we were all over the place, and in a good. Many kids give their life to God. I mean, hundreds of kids. We had some even kids follow us here to Florida. And now, but those things were also, God was shaping us, helping us, but there was a lot of distractions because our plans were, first of all, is maybe we're going to get a big bus. We're going to get all the kids on the bus and going to go tour. Yeah. And that's not what God wanted to do.
I think he knew us better than we knew ourselves.
And other distractions, a church came and asked us to go play in that church. And then they found out that we were finishing Bible college, and they offered us to become a worship pastor and to become a youth pastor. And they had a building, they had all these things going on. And I'm like, God, that's where you're calling us. And then finally, about 6 years into Oklahoma, we had financial goals and God was blessing us. I was sitting in church on the move and I saw the vision of the great building and this whole cafe 180, and we'll talk about this some other time. And I came to you and I said, baby, I think God is maybe calling us to go plant a church. I did not know anything. I was a youth pastor, I was worship pastor, I was a pastor, I was in ministry, but I did not know. I never been an elite pastor in the church. And when I said this to you, now the question to you, we just left, and those 7 years just passed so quickly because we were just out of our comfort zone into Oklahoma, starting over. And financially, we were good. God was blessing us like crazy. How did you again said yes to this and said, all right, now we're going to leave everything behind? And we had rental properties, we had businesses, my band was working for me, just all these awesome things.
Got our parents to almost move.
Yeah, I was building a house for my mom. And that's another confirmation. My mom walked in. She doesn't even remember that. Oh, wow. My mom walked in, and the first thing when she went through the door, the threshold of the house, she said, Yuriy, why do I feel like this house is not for me? Like this house is not.
Holy Spirit said, it's not yours.
Mom, I'm planning a church. But anyway, that's beside the point. How did you, as a mom, again, decided to, all right, let's get out of our comfort zone again, because God is doing something in our life.
Okay, so at this point I have learned a little bit, but not much, because right away I got into my offensive mode. Like, no, God, we have a plan. We're going to get so many rentals. We're going to be financially free. We're not going to ask for money. We're going to be like we're going to do ministry right.
It's better to give. We're going to be on the giving side.
We're going to do it right, God. Like, we're not going to need anybody. We're going to do it ourselves, and we're just going to serve you. And then God came and just kind of like pushed all of our, planning aside. And so at first I was, jolted in my, in my self righteousness, almost saying, but God, look at all the stuff we're planning to do for you.
For you, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Why are you coming in and just destroying it? Lana's in a great school. Christian school. Yes. She's making friends. Everything is good. Why now? Yeah. And
it was a great peak of our life. I mean, financially we're set.
Why now, God? And didn't we tell you that we don't want to be pastors? Yeah. Like, did you not get that memo? And this is the conversation I would have with God. God, are you sure? This is us you're talking about, the people who finished 3-year Bible college in Oklahoma, saying, baby, whatever we do, we are not going to be pastors. Yeah, exactly. Agreed? Oh, yeah. Yes. And we're like, okay.
No. I had a way out. I said, when I'm 65 or after 60, I might take a church and pastor a church. That was my way out.
And I was like, that's so far away. We will be okay. So at first, but then I would go back and replay. And now, what I thought was just uncertainty and ants in my pants feeling, I realized that was the Holy Spirit saying, you know what? It's time for you to move. You are not going to be satisfied with this. Yes, I will bless you, but you are not going to get the fullness of what I have for you. And that was more scary for me than staying in my comfort zone, because I wanted to walk in the fullness of God. I wanted my family to experience everything God has for us and not just bits and pieces, because God will bless you wherever you are. but God has something specific for each of our families, each one of us. And it's better to experience everything than just part of it. And that was for me, that God, you know what? It's scary. We did it again. You did it. You did it before. You're going to do it again. And this time I'm going to trust you more, even though the second time was a little bit harder. Because the first time you're kind of jumping into the unknown, you're kind of excited and something new, and you don't know what the hardships are, what they look like. But the second time you've experienced it, and you're like, it was a little scary, you know, but it makes for a great story. But as you're living through it, you kind of go through it, but God gives us so much grace. And that is the one thing that God just poured out on us through all of this, is grace. Because now when I go back and we share our stories, I was like, wow, it was pretty bad at some parts.
Yes. Oh yeah, we didn't have food for 2 weeks at one point, and we couldn't call mom. We're like, all right, we're eating whatever the leftovers we have, and the check is not coming for 2 more weeks. Yeah.
But it was a lot of grace, and I think I just learned that it's best to follow God, and just you get so filled with his love and grace that you can move mountains.
Amen. And in that time, I just want to tell people that exactly where we were financially. We were setting all the goals. We were on house number 4 or 5, you know, and we had renters, and we're building another one. And with the band, we finally broke through the radio, 300 some radio stations, and we got it on the Christian charts at number 7. And we started, the doors starting to open up. We had a couple of managers from Nashville looking into us. We were all these things going on, and then this unsettling of the soul started to kick in. And I think it was both of us, something's missing in our life. Yeah, something. I don't know if I like that analogy, but
well, it's just that, you know, like you're anxious. Yeah. I would say anxious.
And I remember we're driving from Ohio. We just shot a new music video, and it was all the production team was there, everything. I just walked in on the set. I felt like, oh my gosh, we made it, did something. And I'm driving home. I said, guys, I'm just depressed. I'm down. I don't know what's going on in my life. God is doing something to me. And I stopped everything. We stopped everything. And then the next door opens up. The company that I was contracting with, the guy comes in and says, hey, you know, if you give me 2 years, you're going to be the next CEO of our company. And in the company of, you know, 5 states, big company, all the friends are in there, all the money's, the majority of the money coming from there, and this and that. And then I come home and I said, baby, hey, we've made it. Not only we have houses and rental property, this and that, I can be the CEO of this company and make good money, and this, you know, I can be here for good. And I remember your phrase. You said, you're going to be the worst CEO they've ever had because we're not going to follow God. Something along those lines.
I said you were going to be the most depressed.
Depressed CEO. Yes, that's exactly what you said. Yeah.
I didn't say it. You probably make a really good CEO. Miserable. Actually, miserable. There you go. Miserable. There we go. We found the word. Yes, miserable was the word that I used.
And in that moment, I felt like, you know what? My baby's with me. We're together in this. We're going to jump in and do this all over again. Mm-hmm. The story goes on to say that we sold 5 homes within a matter of 2 weeks. 2 weeks. We were almost homeless, didn't know where we were going to go, and how God confirmed the next journey. But here's what I want to bring this second podcast to, and bring you this main point, that when God is calling you to something, when God is calling you, first of all, you have to get to the place that you trust one another. That you can't do, if you're a husband or you're a wife and you're watching this, you can't do something on your own saying, God is calling me to do something here, and because it's together. It's a covenant in good and bad and ugly, in sickness and in riches and poor, in every area of life. The calling, if you're married, its calling is to both.
God will not put a separation. Mm-mm. Only confirmation, I would say.
And you followed me with the Hardy Avenue all over the place, and you were in the stinky van with 4 different guys and all the kids.
And we did that twice.
Twice or three, maybe a little bit more. But but you followed me everywhere, and we were in this together, and God gave you grace. Even when we got to Oklahoma, living in one room because we were constructing and remodeling a new house, and our kitchen was a water hose.
It was fun times.
Outside, kids would hold the water hose and we would wash the dishes.
That is the one time we did not have to ask our kids to do the dishes.
Yeah, we were all wet in summertime and spraying. It was fun.
Anna would spray the hose, Michael would hold the dish.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yes, but when you get to this point, when you trust your spouse, and you praying together, and you reading together, and you have same goals together, and you talking about goals together, because we consistently started talking about what's ahead of us, what our financial goal is. People live in just, I trust God, but I don't need to do anything. No, God's calling you to be obedient with your finances. If you need to be frugal, sometimes you got to be. Don't go eat out. Every single area of our life, almost, we talked about it, we prayed about it together. And here's what I'm trying to get to. But when you're in this position and God is calling you, don't hesitate. Jump in. Just like we jumped in 2009, we jumped in 2014, and we went all in.
Yeah, just like I want to remind you to share your clip.
Story, yes. Last week, me and my best friend Michael Infalt and Christian Infalt, it was like a couple's getaway. We went to Nashville, and he.
I don't know what you mean by we went to mass.
Oh, my Siri is talking to me. There we go. That's cool. She doesn't know. It's okay. It's fun. Me and my best friend Michael, we went. It was a couple's getaway, and we went to Nashville. And he was telling me a story about how when he wanted to go out with Christian, he went, and his father-in-law went to this cliff, and his father-in-law said, "If you want to date my daughter, you better jump off of this cliff." And he was frozen. He couldn't. It was so high.
For 2 hours.
For 2 hours. I don't remember that. And so,
preached about it.
and we got a little fishing boat. We rented a fishing boat, and we went to this cliff, and we climbed up this cliff, and it's 50-some feet. And Michael just, without hesitation, he didn't even look down, and he just 1, 2, 3 jumped. And woo! And in that moment when he jumped, I was like, I'm next. But before I'm next, I'm gonna look down. I hesitated. And I was there for how long? For
about 25 minutes.
25 minutes. I was like, I can't jump. And they're watching me. I'm like, guys, I'm climbing down. And I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. And finally, Michael came back. And he said, dude, I'm going to do it with you again, but this time you jump first. And it was a little bit of hesitation. And my wife, Victoria, is sitting in the boat, and she's like, baby, you can do this. You can do this. Come on, jump. We're not leaving until you jump. Why is that? Tell me.
Oh, well,
because you're usually not a.
No, well, because
when it comes to heights and something, you're like, no, avoid it.
Yeah, usually, but when I know that if you were committed, if you made that decision to be up there and jump, and you just had to, because you always tell me that I want to conquer my fear, I want to overcome. And so being, partner in life, I knew this about you that, and Michael was swimming back into the boat, and he's just like, you know what, it's okay, let's just, tell him to get off and we'll take. And I was like, oh no, he is jumping off that cliff. And Michael looked at me like, wow, because I usually don't say that. He knows too. But I was like, because this is what's going to happen. We're going to get home. He's going to think about it. He's going to regret it. He's going to sit me back into a car, drive all the way down here, rent another fishing boat that barely stays on the water, and we're going to do this again. So he's going to do it now. And so that's when Michael jumped off. He was like, we're doing this.
Yeah. And when he was there, it was like an extra energy. It was an extra encouragement.
Yeah.
He was standing behind me. He ain't going to catch me. He wasn't going to catch me. But there was somebody there, somebody that I trusted. Again, it's a trust thing. And I jumped. It was fun. So I just want to leave you with this. When you're on the same page, don't hesitate. Just jump in. Trust God. And when you, first of all, number one point, if you look up and say, God, I trust you and I'm going to serve you for the rest of my life. It's not a position that I'm looking into. It's not anything. It's you I'm going after. And whatever he's opening and whatever he's doing in front of you, now grab a hold of your wife, grab a hold of your husband and say, baby, we're doing this together. We're going to pray. We're not going to hesitate. We're going to jump in, because every single stage of our life and everything that we jumped into, it was a closer and closer and closer to the things that God has in front of us, to walking in the calling of God. We started walking in the calling of God with our first decision, our following God. That was our first thing. And then molding, shaping, God helped us and everything like that. And so when you're on that journey, don't hesitate, jump in and trust God all the way. Next podcast, we're going to tell you the story how we left Oklahoma now, went to Florida and planted this church that I am currently a lead pastor of Impulse Church. So may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine on you. May the Lord be gracious to you, turn his face towards you and give you peace. See you on the next podcast.